listen, never in my life associated the word boring with baseball.
We know what's up.
Me? Yeah. Famous? Yeah.
And I'm like giddy over there smiling like, we're about to win this shit.
Did everyone give you crap? Give me a good host story.
I'm not picking it up.
We both love the game.
We talk about it every day.
Get on baseball.
Having some popcorn, you're fooling around your phone.
I'd have to wait in line for 3 hours.
Hang on, because it's about to be a wild ride.
Obviously, there's no human being I'd rather be talking to right now than Shawn Spradling. So good in person, our first in person, right?
It's about time. I mean, we've been connected on Twitter for 2 years now, over 2 years, and we finally got to meet.
You're a little taller than I thought. I'm probably just as ugly as you envision. So I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate seeing you, and we're here at the winter meeting, which is an awesome experience. I mean, so
in Dallas too. So you're in my town.
I know, and so when we first started talking, it was, let's see, I'm trying to remember. So it was 2003 was the WBC. Leading into that,
2023.
Yeah, so it was probably January. It was almost a couple years ago.
Almost 2 years, yeah.
Right, and so you've come a long way, but also it's like this. You've integrated yourself in the world of baseball, in large part because of the WBC, international baseball, all of that, which is awesome. But now you're sort of integrating yourself here. And every time you do something, like when you went to the WBC, you probably said, oh, wow, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Yeah. Is the winter meeting what you thought it would be like? I'm really anxious to get this answer, by the way.
Really? Yeah. So this is definitely the first time I've been to the winter meetings. And I think so far it has pretty much been what I expected, thanks to some preparing that I did. Watched some YouTube videos, read some articles about what to expect at the winter meetings. Yeah. And also, this isn't my first taste at the media anymore. So, for example, when I was at the WBC in 2020, last year in 2023, that was a completely new experience. I'd never touched media before, and this time a little bit more seasoned. I at least sort of know what to expect. So it's been fun. I mean, you get to just be in the conversation. Baseball's all around you, and there's you see players walking by, GMs walking by, the whole baseball media is here. For the international baseball fans, I've also seen plenty of personnel from Japanese teams in NPB, Korean teams KBO.
I mean, this is the thing, is that you are recognizing people who I would walk right by.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
Well, I would say actually that is one thing that was a little unexpected. I didn't know that there was such a presence of NPB personnel and KBO personnel, because they're also here making deals too, showing off their players and just talking with MLB organizations.
So, and the great thing there's a lot of great things about your WBC experience, and we've said this is hey, listen, don't worry, it'll be here before you know it, and it will, right? I mean, it's what do you say? Well, the qualifiers is...
So we got the WBC is just over a year away, but qualifiers are in 3 months. It's literally February. End of February is already WBC qualifiers. For the next go around.
The great thing is you, because of the people that you interviewed and were introduced to at the WBCs, now we're able to utilize those videos and those interviews. And at the top of the list is Roki Sasaki, excuse me. And so when you saw him and you interviewed him and you were around him, what did you feel like his timeline was going to be about? And we're going to get to him. Joel Wolf, his agent, talked today, sat in on that. But I'm just anxious, going back a couple years, your perception of him.
Yeah, I would say from my perception and from the conversations that I was having back at the end of 2022, heading into 2023 for the WBC last year, there was not much talk of him being posted early.
He was so young. I mean, he was still 19. Right?
He was 21. Yes, okay. He was 19 when he, I think, first
WBC.
signed. Well, he was 21 turning 22, I believe, at the WBC.
Yeah.
So he was 21 last year. And there was not really any talk about him being posted early because he still hasn't had multiple years on his contract with the Chiba Lotte Marines. So there wasn't really anybody talking about that. It was more focused on the WBC and just his insane year that he had with the Marines there. And then I think just throughout 2023, by the end of the season last year, is when he really started, the buzz started talking about, does he have some sort of clause in his contract that allows him to be posted early? Has he already agreed to something with this team? Are they honoring his what he wants to do? So I think it was after the 2023 season and after the WBC when that started to come up.
Okay. And so, obviously, we had so many guys that on that Japanese team that people said, you got to see this guy. You got to see. Yeah, at that time, it was Yamamoto. Like, we had the power ranking. It was Yamamoto, right? Yamamoto was the guy. Sure, we already knew about Ohtani.
Because we had Roki Sasaki and Yamamoto were both like the guys that you need to know on the pitching staff. But one of them was a lot closer to MLB.
Oh, yeah.
And a little bit older. He's still only 20. He was only 25. But he was the guy. He was like the next guy to come over to MLB. So people wanted to know everything about him.
I do remember Shawn like talking to an executive because everything was about Yamamoto at that, like we said, at the WBC. But then in the next breath, they'd be like, hey, but you got to know this guy Sasaki.
Sasaki's coming.
Sasaki's coming. Like that's this. You're like, and this is how it always works. The next guy is the best guy. But it was like at that time, and then you saw him pitch, and you saw him pitch in person. I mean, it was like, oh, okay, he didn't disappoint, right?
Yeah,
like,
he's unreal. And I mean, he is regularly in the conversation of most talented Japanese pitcher ever. Like that is the conversation that people have in Japan about Roki Sasaki. So it makes sense why even years before he was supposed to be posted, people were already talking about him coming to MLB. I'm glad that he was still able to get a few years in NPB so that he could still solidify somewhat of a career there. But yeah, I'm super excited to see him come over.
So today, as I said, Joe Wolf, his agent, talked, and it was really fascinating to me. It was about a half hour, and he was pretty honest about a lot of stuff, Shawn. And I don't even know where to start, but really to set the scene of what we're dealing with. So this isn't just, hey, most money wins the guy, right? No. And it's absolutely, this is why it's a really, really intriguing scenario, because it's not most money wins a guy, it's international. It really doesn't the money doesn't even matter.
No, because most money is not much different from
it's
the
like
lower
$1 million,
end.
you know? It's so there's that part of it. So that's out of the equation. And also, what's really intriguing, one of the things that jumped to the top of the intrigue meter for me listening to him was that this isn't like the big bad market, the big bad team. I want to go somewhere where marketing. There is a very real feel, as Joel Wolf has expressed, that maybe that even a smaller market team has I don't want to say advantage, but they certainly have a chance. So think about that. You're a small market team. Money isn't an issue. They actually maybe want to prioritize that because, as he said, he's had some really bad experiences with media in Japan, which seems to be a big part of it. It's a perfect storm for equity in baseball, which we never see, right?
Yeah, if he wants something to be a little bit more of an easy, smooth transition to not only MLB, but a new country, a new culture, a new language, and it makes sense that he would be considering small to medium market clubs, like Joel Wolf said, which when he said that was fascinating to me too, because that opens up a whole new group of teams.
You know what it is and because what it is setting yourself up for that payday, right?
Absolutely.
And this is where teams, and I'll just say like teams like the Twins or the whoever, the Brewers or these teams that are building their reputation on the ability to develop pitchers and prioritizing, allocating resources to it. He's going to look at that, and here's the caveat to that: the team that is perceived as the best is still the team with the most money. It's the Dodgers, which, by the way, also on the West Coast. Well, I'm going to get to it in a second, but it's. I mean, I don't know. Like, so what's your perception of in terms of? I don't know. You know Sasaki. Like you know him. You're good.
Great friends. We go way back.
You interviewed him, but the vibe. When I listened to it, between he's had tragedy in his life. I think his dad passed away, and the media. They kept coming back to the Japanese. Do you know? Were you familiar with this, like the Japanese media thing?
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily one thing. Now, as you may believe that I'm close friends with him.
Yeah.
I don't know his situation, his history too well. He is, like, the one time I got to interview him, he was so kind. It was at the end of the WBC after they won the championship.
Yeah, he was in a good mood.
He was in a great mood. Maybe I got the best of Roki Sasaki.
Yeah.
He even like tried to speak English with me, which was awesome. He was
Yeah.
very respectful.
But that's something. I mean,
Yeah, it was huge, and I've only heard great things about him.
Yeah.
When it comes to like his interactions with media, like I said, I don't think it was necessarily one thing. I think it was a couple different factors of, like you said, his family tragedy back in, I think it was 2012,
Yeah.
when he had multiple family members pass away in that earthquake in Japan. It was tragic for him, and he lost his house, his family, and everything. And has had to battle and fight through that to continue his career. So there's that. There's also, like, ever since he's signed, he's been the promised one. He's been the guy
More
in
so,
Japan.
like, so you follow this stuff. How would the promised one meter rate for Sasaki compared to the Yamamotos and these other guys?
Yeah, Yamamoto was always, from what I gathered from like my friends that follow Japanese baseball for years, longer than I ever did, Yamamoto was always known as the best pitcher in Japan when he was there, but was never quite the talent of Roki Sasaki.
Sasaki's more potential, and Yamamoto had already won the
Yamamoto's
awards.
reliable. He's experienced. He's like incredibly smart and fine-tuned for a 25-year-old. Sasaki is like, he's already one of the best pitchers in the world at 22 years old, and still has a lot more developing to, like, ahead of him. And so his potential is sky high. So I think there's that. I think that with his contract situation, there's a lot of rumors and speculation and different sources that have said when he first signed with the Marines back in 2018, I think, 19 maybe, that they had given him a special clause that said, like, whenever you want to go to MLB, you can go. And there's speculation that they didn't honor that last year when he asked to be posted after the WBC. So there's that speculation. There's no confirmation of what's actually in his contract. So I think a lot of media has been kind of like hitting him hard on that. So I don't know. I think it might just be a culmination of all of his different experiences in Japan. I know that Joel Wolf said it. He made that distinction. It's not necessarily like Japanese media based here.
No,
It's
he was very
Japanese
clear it
media
was Japanese
in Japan.
Yeah.
So because of that, I don't see as much of it because it is all specifically in Japan and all in Japanese. But yeah, all of that being said, it makes sense why he would be considering a medium market team.
And the other thing that he's considering, they said they talked about location.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, said, oh, Dodgers, West Coast, but believe it or not, I mean, maybe it's posturing, but he's like, this location hasn't come up.
Yeah.
And so just to give people an idea of like what the process is going to be, that they've already gotten proposals from teams. The posting is the January 15th.
Yes.
15th. They make the decision by then. They will have meetings in a centralized location. They aren't going around. But then the next level, when they get to sort of the final, then they might go visit. So that's where they're at now. But again, they aren't saying, oh, no Midwest, no South, no East Coast. Like none. It's right now it's wide open. And I don't know, maybe it's posturing, but it opens the door for.
Yeah.
It is. I come back to it, Sean. It's like this is the rarest thing.
Yeah.
Where this supreme talent that. The Sacramento A's, the Tampa Bay Rays.
No one's out of it.
No one's out of it.
I got to shout out Baseball Barbecast, the Family
yeah.
Barbecue guys, because they're the ones that said this first, and I agree with it so much. If you think back to the time that the whole Ohtani sweepstakes were happening, that was the last time we felt something like this, to where every team feels like they have a chance for the best of the best. Because back then it was the same thing. He had that cap with the international free agent pool, so you couldn't spend hundreds of millions of dollars.
But if I'm going to go back in time to, there was definitely a West Coast bias, although he met with the Cubs. I'm talking about Ohtani.
Yeah,
he met with the Cubs,
and I think that he did want to be on the West Coast.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was still at the beginning of it. Every team felt like they had a chance because there was like a cap to what you could spend.
Right.
It's the first time in baseball you had a cap that you had to actually consider. But so for Roki, that's really interesting because it could be West Coast, could be East Coast, could be anywhere, Midwest, South. The thing that I'm interested to see how the conversations go with the teams is that I know Joel Wolf mentioned that he doesn't necessarily need to go to a team with like a Japanese mentor, which in my mind, of course, the two that come to mind are Shohei Ohtani and Yu Darvish. And even though Joel Wolf did say that he doesn't need to go, I agree, he doesn't need to go to a team with those. He has looked up to Yu Darvish as like his mentor for years. And so it's hard to say no to something like that. Same way, like, how are you supposed to say no to playing with the greatest Japanese player of all time?
Mm-hmm.
So even though he doesn't have to go to those teams, that's still a pull. So
Yeah.
you got those two guys, you got Masataka Yoshida, you have obviously the Cubs guys.
But the San Diego
Shota.
thing is everyone immediately jumped to the Dodgers because Ohtani, Yamamoto, and I think they ill-advisedly were like, oh well, resources, but also the pitching development. But San Diego has a pretty good pitching development.
Yes,
San Diego has Darvish. By the way, AJ Preller. They were absolutely in on Ohtani, absolutely in on Yamamoto. AJ Preller learned how to speak Japanese. Been to Japan more than probably any high-end executive there was.
They've already publicly talked about Sasaki.
Right,
they're very much in on him.
Yeah, and so it's a great thing, and I think that's why when Joel Wolf talked today, there's the media besides the Japanese media. It was packed.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. And now there's nothing else going on. In fairness, that's another thing that you learn about the winter meetings. A lot of standing around.
There is.
But but the other thing about Sasaki, we had Lance Brzezowski on, who really breaks down the under the hood stuff with these guys to the point where he said hey, listen, with Yamamoto, this is what you got to be wary of. He's not this superhuman guy. This is what you got to be wary of. And sure enough, he wasn't this superhuman guy. And he had broken down sort of Sasaki. And you look at, since you interviewed him, coincidence or not, since you interviewed him, there has been some bumps in the road for this guy. There was an oblique injury. There was shoulder stuff, which you're always wary about. And Joel Wolf, when he's talking about setting up for the future, he was honest. He's like, there's no guarantees. Mm-hmm. We get it.
Yeah.
We get it. But really, since that time at WBC, Sasaki's Q rating hasn't skyrocketed because we've had these bumps in the road, right?
Yeah, I would say that his stock may have even been higher at the time of the WBC or before the WBC because he was just coming off of his incredible season.
Yeah.
And since then there have been multiple injuries. So I think that what are the things we know about him? He has had a couple injuries and it's not a sure thing, it's a risk. It's not a sure thing with any player coming over. We know that he doesn't have coast bias as of what Joel Wolf is saying. He loves you, Darvish, loves Shohei Ohtani. So there's a lot of factors that are out there. I'm just curious to see what he wants.
Right.
Because if he doesn't want the media storm, if he is trying to make this hard transition over to a new culture, I think that there will be, of course, the baseball on the field factors. He wants to be at a good pitching development organization. But then there's also he may not want to go to a big organization if he just doesn't want to deal with the media storm at first.
Well, and that's the key thing, at first. Yeah. I mean, he'll have time to figure out in the next couple of years about, what he wants and when he signs, if he's good, and they're going to sign the enormous free agent contract. But it is at first. And so basically how this is going to play out is as you said, it's going to be, he's coming over to the United States this week, and they're going to start going through things. But I think even Joel Wolf, we don't really know. We don't really know what he's thinking because
he's quiet. He's not a really outspoken guy. He's a little bit more reserved, and so I really want to know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
I want to know what he's looking for. What would you say is the biggest question that you have about him, and would you say is the general media's biggest question?
Well, it's two different things. Is okay, what is he prioritizing? That was the brunt of the question. So what is he prioritizing? And Joel Wolf said, I don't know. I don't know yet. Yeah. Because it's not the money. It is he's being advised to set everything up. And Joel Wolf had talked about Yamamoto. He said when they started the process, he said, please, 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 when you go into it, clear your mind. Mm-hmm. Clear your mind of what you've heard. Talk to people, look at things, look up, look at history and all of this stuff. So that's important. So I think that they got the right guy to sort of guide him. And then really, to me, it's also, how good is he? Mm-hmm. I mean, I got to be honest with you. If you ask me what he is now compared to when you interviewed him, I have a different perception of him. And this isn't a bad thing. I just think that this guy is so attractive because he has such a high ceiling, but this is not no doubt about it, thing. And I think they're going at first time addiction is denial. I think that he actually accepts this. I think that his agent accepts it. There's work to be done. This isn't just being dropped in and you're going to win the Cy Young.
Yeah.
I don't think, right?
No, I don't think so. And I think you're right. Like there are questions, very real questions that make it seem like, I mean, we know that it's not a sure thing because he's still so young. He does have that injury history, and he still hasn't he still has room to grow. Like his I'm sure you talked about this with Lance Brozdowski, but his pitches aren't even perfectly refined, like the shape of them yet. So there's still room for him to grow. And like things like his velo was down last year because of those injuries. So there's some concerns. So on that side, I don't know the injury side of it as well. I just know how good he was before these injuries. They say that he's recovered from them, and assuming that that's the case, if he gets back to that potential and that peak that he was at and about to reach, there is not a Japanese pitcher that has a higher ceiling than him.
So the last thing is that there's always some guys who up here, like we focus on one. Like last year, we focused on Yamamoto, right? And then next thing you know, the Chicago Cubs have the best Japanese pitcher, right? And so there's always these guys. I don't know if there's a guy that you're keeping an eye on that maybe dropped into the major leagues this year and like, oh, he's pretty good.
Like Japanese guys?
Yeah, Japanese guy. Yeah. Maybe there's not. I don't know.
It's kind of tough because there were two headliners last year with Yamamoto and blanking on his name, Cubs, Shota Imanaga.
Yeah.
This year it's Roki Sasaki and kind of everyone else. And then there's some some pitchers that should be posting sometime in the next few years. You have Hiroya Miyagi and Shunpita Yamashita. There's like a couple names, but none of them are like imminent right now.
Well, let me ask this. So you named it. We weren't saying that that the guys that you mentioned, I don't think were as talked with as much high esteem as Sasaki is right now, right? When you look at the pitchers or the players, the pitchers, whatever, from Japan who you've covered and talked about and have been part of the conversation over the last whatever since you started doing this, in terms of high-end potential, is Sasaki the biggest and the best? Like he again, I'm looping back to our initial conversation, but is he like? We can't forget that this is the be all end all, right?
I think that we now have a almost an issue with thinking that every single player that comes over from Japan since Ohtani is going to be the next big thing and being disappointed from there. You can throw all that out the window with Sasaki because anybody that is in the league right now in NPB, he is the guy. Like they're even higher potential, like I said, than Yamamoto, according to all the NPB media and everybody that's in NPB right now. He is known as like the highest potential. There's other players that had better stats than him this year in NPB, but again, that could be injury related. But if you're talking about like who is everyone talking about? Who does everyone want? Who is known as like the next guy? It's Roki Sasaki.
Who's in the finals of the WBC? Come on, tell right now. I want it. We're going to document it.
I'm trying to remember what the brackets are because it might depend on each side. I think that the Dominican Republic is going to hit this year hard recruiting for players. Have you seen their front office?
I saw the coaching staff.
You got Big Papi, Nelson Cruz, Juan Marichal, like all the guys.
I got to be honest with you, like, it's great.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone can coach. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. People are saying, like, okay, yeah, they got players, but what about coaching?
But here's the thing. The great thing about the WBC and coaches is that they have to do it in a short burst.
Yeah.
You know, but it is tricky, and we saw this in with situations that they come up, for instance, with Team USA. I remember, like, Andy Pettit's the pitching coach, right? And there is some, and I'm recency biased, but I was talking to like Daniel Barr's going through his thing with Venezuela, and they don't have much experience as a pitching coach. So what I'm saying is that it's good that they don't have to do a lot of it.
Yeah.
But there are going to be things that are like, oh, is he a good coach?
Well, even for the U.S., so I love Mark DeRosa.
Yeah.
But we had Terry Francona coach at the Premier 12 just a month ago. I would love for someone like of his caliber to be able to coach the WBC national team too. So if I were to guess right
That's
now,
not happening.
yeah, you don't think so?
No, because he's going to be managing the Reds.
Oh, well, that's fair.
Yeah. No, I mean you got to. I mean this.
And
is,
you can't. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to.
Yeah,
coach
he's not
them.
leaving spring training. Yeah, so it's. But point well taken. I would go back Davey Johnson.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was more of like an example. Like DeRosa is great, and I think the players really rallied around him.
Yeah.
But if we could get someone like a Francona
Yeah.
or like Girardi coach,
I'm going to give you a name.
Who?
Joe Madden.
Yeah, that would be a ton of fun.
Yeah, it would be tough for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
it.
It's good to actually meet.
Yeah, I'm going to fly to Dallas every time we do this.
There we go.
All right, thank you.